Hey there, welcome to Scary Ideas episode 9. On this podcast, I try to melt away my biases and explore topics that most people do not give the light of day to. If you would like to be a featured guest on this show, message me on Facebook at facebook.com/Scary Ideas Pod. It's right up there. All you have to do is type fb.com/Scary Ideas Pod. The topics we will be getting into tonight are men abusing their power in show business and men getting into show business for sex and incels, which is short for involuntary celibates. Incel started as a self-described identity. Now it has just become a slur for men in general. The reason we're talking about this tonight is because I think incels are misunderstood and poorly represented. Like, no famous people identify as incels. No successful CEOs or athletes. That needs to change. We need to start seeing some incel advocates who are not just other incels. That's how a movement gets places, I think. It's the civil, like the civil rights movement, or Black Lives Matter. Those movements wouldn't have gotten anywhere if it weren't for people outside the group affected by it, advocating for it. That's just my opinion, though. Speaking of men being creepy, check out this clip of John Lennon.
Sideways, that's what it is.
Were the Beatles before the groupies, or did you have those?
Oh, we had them, yes.
I mean, not did you have them, but were they
didn't
around?
call them.
Well, did you have them? I guess
They
that's
were great, Tom. They were great. They didn't call them groupies then. I forgot what we used to call them. Something like slags, you know.
Slags.
So there's some word they had in England for it. And yeah, I mean, one of the main reasons to get on stage is it's the quickest way of making contact, you know. And you know, you went to see those movies.
That's pretty harsh. They just called them slags back then. So this is John Lennon, one of the most legendary rock and roll artists of all time. This is the last TV interview he did before he got shot and killed. He's just talking about how if the Beatles got groupies and what they called them. This is pretty good.
Movies with Elvis or somebody in it when we were still in Liverpool, and you'd see everybody waiting to see him, right? And I'd be waiting there too. And they'd all scream when he came on the screen. Right? So we thought, that's a good job. That's why most musicians are on stage, actually.
Why?
Look at his face. Look at him. Did you see his face up there as he said that? Like, John was like thinking about it. Was like, should I say this? Should I tell him?
Good job.
Look how unsure he was after he finished saying it. And then look at this guy's face.
That's why most musicians are on stage, actually.
See, look at the way his eyes just opened wide. He's like, holy shit, is he really saying that? Even in the 70s?
Why is that?
To get a little, Tom, to get a little extra.
What, a little extra money?
Yeah, you know what it is. It is 2 o'clock, right? We're all right.
No, you got to be kidding me. Is that one of the big reasons, the sexual aspects?
He said that at 2 o'clock. Dude, this is John Lennon. He doesn't give a fuck. He already made it. He was already successful as you could get. Why would he mind telling you that that's why he got into it?
Singing, that's the
For a little something extra, dude. Look at that.
reason most of these great
I would say that
artists
any
are on
performance-
stage, that they don't care about their music, that they're just up there for a little extra?
No, but that is a good incentive for all performers. Let's not just pin down the poor musician.
And it wasn't well, you speak for yourself, John.
Poor musician.
Well, all right. I can't speak for musicians then.
No, and please don't speak for those of us who toil in the television vineyard, because that is
yes.
He's like, don't throw me under the bus just because it's the 70s or whatever, and I'm also in showbiz. Don't assume I also am just doing it for puss, Mr. Lennon.
farthest thing from our minds.
Of course.
Yes.
I understand that.
Now, and
Got
you
to do
say,
the news as well.
and then I could assume that when you say that going on the stage to perform music is one of the best ways of making contact,
Yeah.
that what you're saying is it's one of the best ways of making sexual contact.
Well, yes, we're not looking to have a card game. That's what it is. You know?
He just straight up was like, yep. Well, yeah. Look at that guy's
Don't go
laugh.
on stage.
Did you see that laugh? That's the laugh of someone who's also doing the thing that you're talking about. That guy who's interviewing him, I don't know who the fuck it is, but man, is he also probably the most... I'm not just going to assume he's... who cares? It's hilarious, dude. This guy knows he's getting pussy on the side, dude. He's getting pussy every night.
Yeah.
That what you're saying is it's one of the best ways of making sexual contact.
Well, yes, we're not looking to have a card game. That's what it is. You know?
It is. Holy shit.
You don't go on stage and think, that would make a nice card game.
Most of the young women who followed the rock groups then were very, very young. They were in their teens. And I just wonder if ever there was a problem.
Look at see the way he fucking picked the way he rubbed his nose as he was like thinking about how to get into this subject. Like, well, yeah, they were. So fuck, I wasn't the Beatles. I guess I have to fucking be honest.
Father or mother might have called the dressing room on occasion and said, hey, what's going on down there? And you probably said, quiet, there's a card game going on.
Yes, sure. No, I mean, in the very early days when we were playing dance halls, there were just a certain type, which you call groupies now, which would be available for functions at the end of the night. And in general, most kids would just go home with their boyfriend or whatever, you know. And there was always a small group that just went for any performer. They didn't care whether it was a comedian
This
or
is
a
getting weird. This is getting weird. He's talking about kids. He said kids.
man who ate glass, you know, as if it was on stage.
Right, the guy who swept up after the elephants. Hey, where are you going?
Right. And actually, the people that work for rock groups usually get more action than the actual rock group, right?
I don't say right to me because I.
Well, imagine, Tom,
he's like, dude, this is 1980, and what you're saying, even for now, is not appropriate. He was like, even then, he was worried about being Me Too'd. 40 years before that, it was even a fucking thing or whatever. Isn't that hilarious? 30 years. Let me fucking play that again. That was too good.
Groups usually get more action than the actual rock group, right?
I don't say right to me. Because
well, don't say right
Tom,
to me.
They auditioned.
That's fucking
right.
They get the cream of the crop, you know. If you want to see Elvis, you got to see me first.
He's not even trying to get out of the fact.
Let me pause here for these announcements from our affiliated stations.
He's not even like trying to backpedal at all. He's just like, well, yeah, there were people, there were teenagers. Anyway, that was freaking hilarious. I'm going to try to get at least one caller on the show tonight to talk about what we've been talking about so far. Maybe comment on the Lennon clip we just watched, or we're going to talk about something that someone actually I asked to talk about, which is Louis C.K., because he was doing some shows here in Chicago. And I guess it caused some kind of controversy because he's Louis C.K. and people are kind of like witch hunting against his comedy career, whatever you want to call it. That's my point of view, is that it's a witch hunt kind of against him to continue performing. So I'm trying to get someone on the air who is against him, and also someone who is for him. I'd like to get them on back to back. And one of them actually went to see him last night at Zanies. So let's actually just pull up some articles about that. If you just type Louis C.K., there's already in Chicago Tribune, there's multiple articles, I think. No, there's one article in the Tribune about how he makes no apologies, Louis C.K., for his run of shows at Zanies and Rosemont. We weren't even allowed to take notes. What does that mean? So they policed the crowd from even writing shit down? That's pretty crazy, dude. Comedy's becoming like that. It's becoming the point where we have to police people from talking shit about it or from distributing it, even in written form, dude. I don't actually know if that's what they're saying. But anyway, anyone expected an apology or remorse from comedian Louis C.K. regarding his widely reported sexual misconduct. We'll have to keep looking. Yeah, why would he... He's not on an apology tour. He's on a comedy tour. Why would he apologize? I mean, who was expecting him to apologize after, like, now? He did already. That was kind of... I don't think he was planning on going on an apology tour, if that's what they expect. I think this is like the first big... Like, it's one of the big first clubs that he's played in Chicago. So I think that's why it's making headlines or whatever. Otherwise, who cares? He's been doing stand-up. So what are they so up in arms about? Oh, they talked about what he talked about? At times during his show, he almost reveled in the shame, claiming everyone in the audience has a thing, and that they do sexually that would be embarrassed. Wait, I think there's a typo. I think they were supposed to say what they do sexually, because that did not sound grammatically correct. It threw me off completely, too, and I thought I was doing a good job, too, so that really blew my ego there. So anyway, what they do sexually... Okay, I can't read this sentence. It's hard to understand in my head. And how privileged we are that, unlike for him, nobody knows what it is. Yeah, see, that's what I would say if I was him. I'd be like, well, you guys are also creepy. We just don't know it yet because you're not relevant enough for us to care. His own culpability in the reports of him masturbating in front of women went unmentioned. Instead, he put the focus squarely on how he's been affected by the fallout. Well, what the fuck else is he supposed to do? Talk about his culpability? I mean, why would he do that? That's not funny. About how he did something wrong and he's sorry? That's hard to make that funny, dude. It's funny to see someone complain more than it is. I mean, self-deprecation's good too, but I think that's what he's doing by the fall. I don't know, dude. He used to play arenas. He noted at one point with a cynical laugh, reminding the audience how lucky they were to see him in such an intimate space. I mean, yeah, they are lucky to see him in such a... I totally would be thinking that if I was at the show. So he's just kind of being self-aware to the fact that people literally were lucky to fucking see him. That's what they were thinking probably. They're like, oh shit, we get to see this dude that we saw in a fucking arena 3 years ago. Now we could see him in literally 20 feet away or even closer for the same price. Holy shit, this is pretty cool. And he's more famous than ever. And he's like one of the most talked about people in the world. So I don't know, I guess at this point I'm defending him, but I'm the host. I'm allowed to be, I'm not trying to be unbiased. This is a very biased fucking show. I show my opinions on here. I don't care what happens. But anyway, he doesn't want anyone quoting him on that. On top of the use of a yonder case to keep everyone's phones locked up throughout the course of the show, which is something a number of comics, blah, blah, blah. The show came with an additional disclaimer that I've never seen before. Recording of any kind, including note-taking, is not permitted in the showroom. You'll be asked to leave if you just take notes. You can't even write down... Well, who would do that anyway? Who writes down shit during a comedy show? That is probably frowned upon no matter what anyway, in any comedy show, because then you're being an asshole, not paying attention. Like, what are you doing? And what could you be saying on paper that was going to matter outside of the comedy show, you fucking journalist? Just means you're a fucking journalist trying to take the piss out of him. Anyway, I'm getting pretty passionate over this. I tested the waters during one of the opening acts using a pencil to write down the comic's name. Okay, why? I wrote it on a comic card, and someone quickly approached me, pointed, and said, "There's no writing during the show." So you fucking broke the rules? They told you that you couldn't. Why you breaking the rules of the fucking club, you fucking journo? I'm going to start calling people journos that I don't like, even if they are journos, even if they are literally journalists. At one point, CK talked about how we expect cripples to be happy with their situation, but notes that he lost his legs. If he lost his legs, he'd never be happy. 10 years after losing his legs, he wouldn't move on, he asserted. He'd still be complaining about how he wished he still had legs. It's not a huge jump to make a connection to how CK sees himself as the victim in all of just this, claiming he lost $35 million in an hour. And when the story came out, and that he's still that's a long sentence, dude. This journo needs to get better at shortening their fucking sentences, dude. I'm reading this aloud. This is not meant to be read aloud, I guess, but hey, still, it's still a lot to fucking chew on, dude. Anyway, so now they're going into what he talked about, trying to defame him even more, trying to point out he's still an asshole. He does jokes about cripples. I wasn't allowed to write about it at the time, but I remembered. And then later, he spent a good amount of time breaking down the R word, noting that when he was growing up in the 70s, it was the correct word to use. He's been saying that. Every comedian says that shit. That's a hack bit, dude. What are you, going after what every comic says, duh? He claims no mentally disabled people have ever been offended by it. His central conceit here seems to be the increasingly common refrain of many comedians, that people are ready to be outraged by things that don't affect them personally. So yeah, Louis is doing the shit that pretty much he should be doing, which is breaking down PC culture. PC culture has been running amok and infesting and infecting and destroying the art of comedy for the past fucking ever. Since even Lennon Bruce was in a fucking comedy career. Dude, people have been fucking telling people that you can't do this, you can't talk about that, you can't do that, especially if you're that. It's fucking obnoxious, dude. Everything's about how you gotta have the fucking, you gotta be correct. It's like, what the fuck does that even mean, dude? So yeah, Louis is just doing what pretty much all the good comics are trying to do right now, which is to try to show the audience that, hey, I know that this is funny. I don't give a fuck what it means to you. I'm showing you that I could get around all this horse shit and just be funny and not care about what it actually means. Because I mean, that's being very simplistic. Of course, you care what it means. The point I'm trying to make is that just because you're saying something bad, like the R word or making fun of cripples, that could still be fucking funny, dude. Even if you use the wrong word and everything, not that I'm saying I do it, and I'm not an authority on this subject. So anyway, we're going over this Tribune article about C.K. Louis C.K. He did a set. He did several shows, a run of shows at Zanies. He's currently still doing that, actually, as we speak. He's probably almost on stage right now, actually. I don't know. So as we speak, he is generating... I don't know. Who cares, dude? Anyway, so towards the end of his set, he said that while he is glad that homosexuality has become more acceptable in society overall, he wonders if there are any gay people who are actually upset by this acceptance. positing that part of the enjoyment they felt was in engaging in behaviors others saw as bad or wrong, and considering whether they could even enjoy being gay anymore if it's not a secret. Even that reads funny to me because it's a really original premise that in his voice I could see being a fucking masterful piece of stand-up commentary, because I've literally never heard anyone even do that premise, let alone do it successfully. So that's a funny premise. I'm not going to comment on it more because it's so new. And this bit of pond, like, that's one of those edgy fucking jokes that you have to be really good, and you have to learn how to hone it for it to become not offensive. Because if you just went out of the gate and said, hey man, fucking gay people can't even be fucking gay anymore because I won't accept it now. This bit of pondering felt like his biggest confession of the night, even without a direct mention of his own predilections, serving as a direct rebuke to the claim that he didn't know what he was doing was wrong. He was doing, as he was doing it. The wrongness of it was the point. Okay. So why does New York Times or whatever this article, Chicago Tribune, why do they have it out so hard for Louis? Like, this is a very negative article. Like, they say, oh, he's vulgar for vulgarity's sake. Like, I picture the guy who wrote this, the most suburban, boring-ass picket fence person. I should have put a bigger insult at the end instead of just saying person, but you know the word I wanted to say. He had plenty of what could be considered classic Louis C.K. material, stuff that pushes past, was generally acceptable to joke about while attempting to make a point in the process. Okay. But can Louis C.K. on an unpublicized, downright furtive tour of the country work with the same level of nuanced material as the theater-packing comedian of pre-2017? So he's saying work as in, can he work with the same level of material? Gotcha. Can he work with material? That was a very hard to understand sentence, especially when read in real time for the first time. I think this person was just trying to be concise and also judgy in one sentence as much as they could. Like, be as judgy and descriptive as they can, but descriptive in a dick way. Who wrote this fucking article? He doesn't even look like the most fucking suburban white picket fence asshole. This guy, he has a fucking degree in computer science. Then what the fuck does he know about fucking stand-up comedy? What a douche, dude. He has fields in theater, too. I mean, a degree in theater. What a douche, dude. And so why does he write for comedy? Because of theater? I don't think those are the same thing at all, dude. Like, just because they're grouped in together because they're both parts of show business doesn't mean they're the same fucking thing. He's written about theater. All right, and I'm just reading about this guy's boring life or his career. So that's it. He's written about theater and comedy. But what's his so he has no credentials, basically, is the point I'm making. This guy has no credentials in comedy, yet he's writing about comedy, and he knows about computer science because he likes to be very computative and likes to be an authority on, shit that's offensive. All right, we got our first caller coming in. Hey, how's it going? And what's your name?
Hey, what's up, Tim? This is Sam. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, it's Prickett. Oh, okay. Thanks for calling. Dude, cool. Still waiting for that first guy to call in who wanted to fucking rant. But hey, I've been ranting.
How am I doing? I'm doing fantastic, man.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was just saying how I've been ranting for the past 20 minutes about
Just alone, just a solo
Yeah.
rant. You're burning it.
Yeah, dude, someone's got to carry the show. They usually just have callers, and that makes it so much easier. But
Yeah.
when there's no caller, I just have to fucking monologue. So I've been going over this.
Sure.
Yeah. So this Chicago Tribune article came out like today
About Louis.
about Louis' set at Zanies. So you
Yeah.
you were fucking there.
I was there last night. Yeah.
All right.
Hold up, this train's passing. Give me a second. I'm sorry. This is a fucking awful pace.
No problem. So
for
yes.
me anyway, yeah. No, I was there last night. What did the article say?
It was just the most slanderous written by this dude who has no credentials in comedy. He's a computer software engineer or some shit. And he just
Sounds hilarious.
just puts all these slanderous things about, he made fun of the R word. It talked about cripples. Like, it was very slanderous and fully negative and like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he did do all of that, but at the same time, it was just objectively funny.
I bet, because even the way this guy spelled it out, even the premises that, through his own bias still sounded hilarious to me.
Yeah, no, it was a great show, man. He's the best.
So you obviously are on
get
the
it.
cool.
Hmm?
So you're obviously on Team Louis.
I mean, I am in the sense. I mean, I'm not saying that what he did was awesome. I'm just on Team Louis because I think he's one of the best comics of all time. But
Absolutely.
jerking off in front of a woman is a no. But I mean, he's still just objectively a phenomenal artist. So.
That was a good way of clarifying that you're not fully honest. Because when I said, "Hey, you're on Team Louis," like that's a very thing you don't want to just fully say yes to.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think he should still have a fucking career because what he did wasn't even illegal. It was weird for sure. But, anyway.
So basically, you would say that if you are good at stand-up, like, is there a line, like, as long as it's not illegal, right? Like, is there any case where you would censor a comedian because of their by anything? Like, what? I guess I'm asking you a real.
I mean, if you're in jail for the thing you did, right? Let's say Cosby was still relevant and he got caught, when he was fucking like 40 or 50 or not, like 200 or however old he is right now. Yeah, I don't think he should do stand up anymore, obviously, because he's you're talking
about Cosby? Did you mention
abhorrent person? Yeah, Cosby specifically.
Right.
Like if all that came out, when he was still, let's say, in the height of his career, I don't think that guy should do stand up anymore.
Oh, okay.
For obvious reasons.
So there is a line then in crimes.
Yeah, but because he would be in jail though, unless he's doing like live from my prison cell. I don't know.
So in the case that he was not in jail and he just got away with it, like let's say if OJ did stand up, like pretty much everyone agrees. Pretty much the majority thinks he was guilty, but he still is not in prison. So you're for OJ doing stand-up.
Weird. I mean, it's really up to, I guess, the people. Like, I wouldn't go see an OJ Simpson live, right?
Right, because it's a weird example.
I wouldn't go see Louis, but also at the same time, I wouldn't fucking write an article.
Basically,
how OJ.
You'd allow it to happen, but you're not a fan of. I mean, he's not good at stand-up. There's no way he would.
Yeah, I mean, I get people not going to see Louis. I get that. I don't have any problem with that. But writing, and even you could write articles about how blah blah blah, whatever. But the shit on his comedy, I think, is ridiculous, and it also kind of goes against their point. I think of like, no, this person is a bad person. Then like, why are you shitting on his comedy? Because his comedy has nothing to do at all with any more moral fucking whatever of his actions.
Yet that seems to be what they love to do. They love to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, you were there last night, and you know that he obviously is still funny. Would you say he
hilarious,
was all...
dude. He walked up and then closed with a standing ovation both times.
Right.
Half the people in the audience were women. Everyone was laughing. Yeah, it's a great comic. I mean, that guy, to say that he's not to critique his comedy seems ridiculous, because I think he's just objectively one of the best comics to do, in my opinion, But, and
he seems like he's not out to hurt anyone, even when he was. This is just me talking. Like, he seems like a sympathetic, empathetic dude, and also a dude with like a decent heart. Even I never met. It just seems like he has the right. Like, just because he did some perverted acts.
Yeah, no, he seems I
don't think he was out to hurt anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't. I believe that. Yeah, he seems like a decent guy with a fucking weird thing, for sure. But I don't think. I mean, he addressed it first off. He's like, if you're gonna fucking, if you are gonna jerk off in front of someone, and if you're gonna ask if someone, and anyway, never mind. I shouldn't give away his bit on it.
Oh yeah, don't do that.
But, yeah. But he addresses it in a very funny way.
Shit, I'm jealous that you were there.
Great show, man. Really good.
So, and then we could dive a little deeper. So I think we agree on most things. But what about the fact that I played a clip at the very beginning of the show where John Lennon admitted very openly that he was into fucking groupies, and that's kind of why he became a musician.
Huh. Yeah, it was the 60s, it was a different time.
Is it that different? I mean, that's what I was going to pose to you.
I was joking.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah. I was making fun of
it's fine
of people. Yeah.
I mean, some people would probably say that it was different, but because it was a long time ago. But
yeah.
My question to you is, do you still think, first of all, did you get into comedy for that reason? And also, is it okay if I did?
So the question you're asking me, if I got into comedy for the reason of fucking groupies?
For a little extra, yeah. As John, that's how
what
John.
What is a little extra?
That's how he put it.
Fries?
He was on like a late night. It was like 1980 when he did it, but he was not subtle at all. He was like, "I'm not in it for a card game."
Huh.
And he also talked about teenagers being at the shows, and he did not deny it at all.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ.
But that's not necessarily why I got into it. That's just certainly as he put it, he's like, that's a good incentive.
Yeah, to make art. I mean, yeah, just on an evolutionary track. I think most of the motivation to do anything is to get laid, right? If you're getting good at anything, even if it's like, let's say it's not stand-up, let's say it's a fucking accounting or whatever, But if you're the best accountant in the world, chances are you're going to get some pussy out of it.
And then you're talking about men, just men.
Sure, yeah. It seems like mostly a male motivated thing.
And that's kind of one of the subjects that I like to get into, is the difference between men and women. Because, but we probably, it's not that deep to say that men chase status to achieve sexual interaction, as opposed to women who generally. Because another topic that I like to get into tonight, we don't have to, but is incels.
I'll talk about anything. I don't care. Yeah, sure.
What is your first take? Like, what's your reaction when I bring up the word incels?
Man, I really don't have an opinion on it. I had a bit I forget how the bit goes, but like one, because they just kind of seem like sad. They're just kind of like dudes that can't get laid, right? Is basically what an incel is. It's an involuntary celibate bit. So usually it's just kind of an ugly dude with a bad personality. That's a fucking tragedy, really.
Pretty much. And you said ugly first, which I think that's the controversial thing, is if it's, how much is it based on looks versus personality, and the mix of the two?
It's probably a mix, right? But I mean, if you're attractive enough with a shit enough, and your personality's awful, chances are someone dumb will fuck you.
Exactly, and that's what I'm trying to get. I will probably dig deeper into later tonight about how there obviously is a little bit of wiggle room the hotter you are. If you have a shitty personality, if you're hot, there's science and data supposedly.
There's actors, man. Actors get laid. We've talked to them before.
Absolutely. But also that's kind of also a status thing too. It's not just personality or
yeah,
looks.
Yeah, I mean,
Same with the Beatles. Like John Lennon, not the hottest guy in the world, but the music made him the hottest guy in the world.
Incredibly talented. Yeah.
So if you're just a fucking schlub, if you have a shit personality but are a fucking dime piece, then that's the incels will claim, or the men going their own way would claim, they're the chads who have the easier ride in life, and they can say whatever the fuck they want. They could be creepy as they want. See, sounds about right?
Yeah, I mean,
Same's true with women. Yeah.
Obviously, to that, to the creepiness factor. I think if you're, it definitely goes up. If you're the hotter you are, the bar of that is probably equivalent to the creepy bar. But if you overdo the creepiness to your hotness ratio, that's when you get in trouble.
That's very true, but I think in some cases it actually kind of amplifies it, like with the serial killer fucking thing. Like,
sure, like a Dahmer thing. Yeah, but that's the chance if you're no one's that hot to serial kill and get away with it, you know?
They don't get away with it. They just still have fans who idolize them in a sexual conduct. You know, they're sex symbols, some of them.
Sure.
And the other one.
Well, that seems more of like a dark kind of fetishizing thing versus like more romanticizing it versus like actually attracted.
Well, even fucking Charles Manson had a fucking young 20-year-old girlfriend.
He had like a harem.
In his fucking 80s when he's there.
Yeah. Well, that's because he was charismatic and just feeding people acid, I think. You know, you can really get people in a to romanticize you if you just say anything that makes somewhat sense if you're feeding people acid.
True. By this point, I'm talking like in his 70s. This was.
Sure, yeah, when he was in jail, yeah.
By that point, he was just had a legacy, I guess. But
that's also kind of part of the status thing too.
Yeah,
right?
Same thing.
News.
Pretty much. So that's why it's fun to pick that apart and wonder, like, Dahmer, even he's a weird example. I don't know if any women. I've never heard a woman say they wanted to like hook up with him. They just said he's hot. I said he's hot. I don't need a woman to tell me if someone's hot. I know he's hot.
Yeah.
And I think I would fuck him if I thought
You'd fuck Dahmer?
If it was safe to do so. Like if it was in like a controlled.
If you're in a room with no knives, or if you're in a soft padded room.
Yeah.
And he was like sedated.
He was a scary idea.
He was going to overpower you.
Here's a scary idea, and I'll just maybe keep you on for another few minutes if you'd like, and then I'll try to get the other person on because he just messaged me. The dude who wanted to also talk about Louis. Anyway, I'm going to ask you this very edgy question. Do you think Jeffrey Dahmer deserved to be raped by a woman which he was not attracted to, a living woman, the opposite of what he was into, as punishment for his crimes?
Do I think he deserves that?
Yeah. Is that justified? Is it cruel? Unusual?
I mean,
should it be sanctioned by the federal government?
By the government?
Yeah.
Have so like irony punishment? I guess that would be on some level irony punishment.
To that level, though, yeah.
Man,
I'm for it because. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it depends. If you wanted a woman, it'd be also fucked up on another level. If you do that, the woman doing it also didn't want to do it.
Oh, well, that's different. That's another question.
Yeah.
For her, it's just her job.
Sure, yeah.
She'd be fine with it,
yeah. Man, I don't. That would be a very. I mean, I wouldn't care if that happened.
Exactly, I wouldn't care.
I don't know if the government should sanction, state-sponsored rape, but
it just shows. I guess I'm just pointing out the double standard of how that case, it's funny. Like, but doesn't mean I'm pro prison rapes in general, because we know that happens, and we know that it is kind of accepted on some level by society.
Yeah, people do. Yeah.
They go, oh, he's a pedophile. I hope he goes to the most dangerous prison or whatever, like, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's when I think people really just don't care, because if you're like on that level of like created that much suffering. I have no
Pretty
empathy
much.
for you.
Like nobody in the world could think of a justifiable punishment for Hitler, but even if I could, I don't think I would do it. Like nothing is even possible to give him the amount of suffering that he imposed. And also, I don't believe in eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, all that bullshit. I just believe,
it seems like we just get rid of those people,
Yeah.
throw them in jail,
I
get them
don't
out of the
even
genetic
necessarily
pool.
believe in evil.
Sure, yeah. It seems like people just, because evil in and of itself, it's only evil if you are doing it for the sole sake. I mean, I guess there's some people that just do evil for the sake of doing evil, which is, I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't care if Dahmer got raped in prison by an ugly living woman.
Thank you for answering that very deep question.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
It just
All
popped
right, yeah.
in my
Talk
head.
to the fucking the Louis is bad guy.
Okay, you're gonna
What his
stay in the
takes
stream? Are you gonna listen?
I'll listen for a little bit.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for being on the show.
All right, man. Yeah, absolutely.
And anything you need to plug?
Oh fuck, man. I don't know. Just follow me at the Smug Cricket on Twitter and Instagram.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm very nice to the callers, but to the Tribune writers, and we're gonna hear from somebody, I guess, who agrees that. Actually, I don't know. I'm not gonna put words in his mouth before he calls in, but basically, the reason I wanted to have him on is because he posted "fuck Louis C.K" on Facebook. All right, here he is. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
What's up, Tim?
Yeah, not too much. Just had a nice chat with my friend Sam. He was at the Rosemont show last night.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I caught the tail end of that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I made my feelings on it kind of clear via Facebook status. Yeah, just fuck Louis C.K., fuck Zanies.
That's it, verbatim. Yeah, I like the conciseness.
Thank you. Yeah, it's got a Carthago Delanda-esque to it. Yeah, that'll just be like how I end every show from here on out. All 3 that I get per year.
I just love anyone, whenever I see someone with a strong opinion that they need to get out, that's the first type of person I want to have on this show. That is quite a topical take on. It's a topical topic because he's probably on stage right now almost as we speak. I don't know when.
As we speak, probably.
Pretty much.
To a sold-out crowd.
Mm-hmm.
That was like more than happy to buy tickets for him, despite the controversies, for sure.
And
which
so,
actually was which is actually the first thing I thought when Sam mentioned that it started with a standing ovation and ended with a standing ovation. Like, well, yeah. I mean, it's people who are willing to buy a ticket in spite of like having ready access to what his accusers were willing to say, like what they were willing to come forward with. It's like 5-second Google search away, really,
5-second Google search away from basically all the details of the misconduct is what you're referring to.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, went and reread the original New York Times article that came out with the original 5 accusers, and yeah, I just because I kind of felt like I had to refresh my memory. Like, am I remembering wrong? Am I too angry about this? And no, I feel content with my level of anger about it. Fuck the both of them. Fuck it. It's because I get where Sam's coming from too. Like, Sam's a comedian I've seen around town who I really like and respect. But I did notice, like, in an instance where I talked to him, I kind of got a very similar sentiment that I've gotten from a lot of male comics that I, like, if I've, broached the topic with them, like, was it even that bad, what he did and, all that. I didn't catch, like, I mean, did you guys get to talk about all that and all? Or?
We did not go into the actual things he did, and I think we were just reacting on the Tribune article that came out today, which actually didn't go into that. It just went into how he basically just talked about his set and attacked him for his jokes.
Yeah.
So we didn't get into that, and also I don't know if we've. I mean, because the New York, I'm reading the New York Times one right now, and it's such a pivotal, profound article because of the status of the New York Times, because of it, like the way he admitted to it, and like the events that led to the downfall are so hard to just kind of debate about because it was so powerful. But would you agree? Would you say that it's weird that people are going after his actual jokes?
See, that's a hard topic to broach too, because like, I mean, I myself, like every other comedian at the time, like I thought, Louis, before the fall, like was the best comedian out there, and like it was always amazing to watch his work and like watch what he was doing, because there was like certainly a real bravery to his act and like an intensely brutal honesty that was always like part of it, and it's so crazy to watch a person like walk that line of brutal honesty to like, like whereas a white comedian, like he literally got away with saying the N-word, but that was because he was bringing into everyone's mind like the strangeness of the phrase the N-word, so he would do things like that, or he'd, like there's a whole great YouTube video by Nerd Writer, I think it was, where he like analyzes Louis C.K.'s act and how like a lot of times what he's doing is kind of like holding up a microscope to, our own morality, and like whether you like it or not, he does kind of make you like ask hard questions about your own morality, which is kind of cool, because like he weaves it into, a series of jokes, so like where it's like you'll be laughing while you watch it, but it'll actually be something for you to think about later,
Yep.
So like but something that strikes me, like, so at the time of the, like, because I remember the time of the accusation pretty well, because if I recall correctly, this was kind of like closely on the heels of the Harvey Weinstein, accusers and all that.
Yeah.
And I think probably, Harvey Weinstein, even though he was responsible for a studio that was like, behind all these amazing films, he wasn't necessarily like the artist himself. So I think that's a distinction that pops up between Louis and Harvey. And
nobody's defending. The one distinction is that nobody's defending Weinstein.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, but then also because, like for however strongly I feel about Louis's actions, I feel like I can objectively say that Weinstein's were worse. Like he's on like
fair,
this whole different level of stuff. Like, so it's kind of like, if you had, I guess, you guys are talking about Dahmer. I guess it's kind of like if you had Hitler and Dahmer side by side or something like that. just in the scope, it's like different. But
okay, well, so we agree that he was brilliant. Would you say that his material has gotten worse after the scandal? Like, because did you just not even bother caring at that point?
No, well, here's the thing. Like, so I did read the article about his Rosemont set, and I don't know. Did you happen to ever listen to his bootleg set that came out?
Yes, I was wondering if you heard that.
Yeah.
So you are keeping up with it.
I actually did.
Gotcha.
It was actually something that. So at the time, I was kind of thinking of it in terms of like, because regardless of his actions, I can admit that his comedy was good. Like it kind of like
good.
Well, I mean, it's hard to judge now. Here's the thing.
It's too. Okay. I see what you're saying. It's tainted.
I'll come back to that in a sec, because like there's something that I think is missing from his current act, and that's actually kind of talking about that. First it started like with reading an article that like kind of put the seed in my mind, and then I realized that this was something that I was like, I guess kind of disappointed with. But so I listened to the bootleg act, I guess, because I figured, I didn't feel morally clear about watching his Netflix stuff anymore, because Netflix sees streams, and that's why Netflix never really took his stuff down.
Yeah.
This is streams. We know our customers want this. This is also the internet age, where it's like, yeah, you can consume something in the privacy of your own home and not have to worry about people judging you for having consumed it. And I'm kind of guilty of that myself, because I listened to the bootleg set thinking to myself, well, it's a bootleg set. It doesn't really translate to money in his pocket. But
right.
That's the thing. It actually does, because why would a place like Zanies book him if there weren't clear indications that there's an underground following for this guy still? So in my own way, I'm culpable. I mean, it's relatively minor, but it's something that in retrospect, I can realize, this guy wouldn't be continuing to get work if there wasn't a bootleg set that lets people who do all the bean counting know that this is a guy who can still make me more beans.
So you're saying the fact that the bootlegged video got a bunch of reactions, or just
crazy amount of views.
That's why he's continuing to get the work. It's not also because
I'm just saying it's a contributing factor.
Yeah, because also I think people liked what they heard on it, and oh, he's still funny. So I think it definitely added to the negative side too, which made people not want to work with him. A lot of clubs said no. And are probably still saying no, because they don't want to be thrown into the fire, just like Zanies just took the bullet. But did Zanies though? Because here's the thing: they got a week of sold out shows from it, right? How much controversy is really even going to be attached to Zanies over it? I mean, the Tribune, the biggest article, wrote about it, and it was pretty negative. They didn't mention Zanies that much. They did actually kind of try to.
Exactly.
They did mention Zanies about how they weren't allowed to take even notes. I think they were throwing some shade at Zanies.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it also does kind of appear that they're putting the onus on this is clearly at the request of the act, So they do kind of put the onus at his door.
Yeah.
But also the thing is if Zanies is already selling out shows, for Louis, then probably right around the neighborhood, there's probably people who will not be boycotting your venue for that reason. And it also like I said, how much controversy is going to even attach to them? They'll probably ride it out just fine, because how many, real comedy clubs are there in Chicago anyway,
So basically,
that's kind of,
you're against any club booking him, and so I guess we could get into actually why you don't think he should be allowed to work clubs.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, and that was the other thing that I was saying I would circle back around to, and the thing that actually kind of really made me mad when I finally thought about it. And I can't remember where the article came from. It was posted by a fellow comic, and I just kind of read through it, and it did kind of get me thinking. And what I'm going to say is kind of similar to what the article's said, but I mentioned in the very beginning, Louis C.K. was a comic who was always known for intense and brutal honesty, and he, and as a comedian who gets us to kind of think about our own morality, right? And he comes out, and the most he'll do is kind of just a little, haha, isn't this funny that this happened to me joke, we
in
already
reference
know
to the
that,
scandal,
right?
you mean?
In reference to the scandal. Well, we know that those women don't really have careers now. At least not as comics, right?
Did they ever?
And maybe, I don't know. It's really hard to know, because that's where the whole thing gets so problematic, right? Because he shows up and just asks people out of the blue that he's not really had any he hasn't really started the process in any way that people usually go through before they ask to be party to a sexual act with somebody. He just kind of showed up and just asked out of the blue if that was something he could do. You know what I mean?
That's certainly how they made it sound. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so my problem is that, like, it seems like a lot of comics that I talk to, it seems like they take from that original New York Times article, it seems like they remember, like, the one from the very beginning, where the women were laughing.
Yeah, they thought it was a joke, laughed it off, and then he really did it.
Yeah.
He took all his clothes off.
It seems to be like that's the only one anyone ever remembers, Like, no one remembers the one, if you read more than fucking halfway through the article, where the lady said no, like, and it was on the set of a show where he's a guest star, So, like, it's like, I mean, you're a comic. You know that there's not, like, an interview process. You know what I mean? Like, you don't, like, you make these connections. It's all networking, It's all like, so if there's, like, a powerful person there in the room with you, like a person who kind of has influence over your career, and, like, this, I think it's exemplified by the one I was just about to bring up. Like, there was the woman who, like, she thought it was insanely inappropriate that out of the blue he asked her for this, and then, like, when she started talking to people about it, like, she was saying, like, it's the 90s, and, like, it seemed like all the men were drawing away from her. And then I don't remember if this was the same woman or if it was a different one, but then there was, like, his manager was, like, making calls to silence her. So it's like, like, okay, we know that there's, like, a network of people who are enabling this behavior.
Seems like, I definitely heard that about the manager going after the victims, and you're referring to Rebecca Corey. She was the one who got angry. It was on set in 2000.
And then it was his old manager too, right? Because, like, at the top of the article, they talk about his current manager as a guy. I only remember his name because his name was Louis C.K, which is, like, well, that's easy to remember. But so it's just like you're basically like Can you really tell me that this guy who's this intelligent, like, who thinks about the way people are and the way people interact this much, like, really doesn't have any understanding of power dynamics, like, that he's not actively using power dynamics to his advantage?
That's the crux of the argument, because this was in 2005. He was not the same act that we know him as in the late 2000, in, like, 20, he got famous for those types of, like, really like the ones you were talking about where he breaks down stuff, and, like, that didn't happen until definitely after 2005. But aside from that, even like, he was not that famous. But even aside from that, yes, I agree that there definitely was a power dynamic. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of why he even asked or approached them, is because, I'm a superior to her, just like a boss would do that with sexual harassment in the workplace. It's just it's the same thing as that, I think.
Yeah. Well, and you guys pointed out, like, what he did wasn't illegal. Yeah, but that's because, like, you can't really put hard metrics. Like, a stand-up environment, does not have those same, like, hard titles, like, where someone is, on paper in charge of you.
Definitely
it's like
not.
on
You're
paper you're
independent,
superior.
Independent contractors, pretty much. But if it happens on set, maybe then there's some HR. Is there some HR system in like, show business? I don't think so. I don't know.
Exactly, there is not, and that's why. I mean, like, and like, call-outs, basically, are something that developed in the absence of any process for seeking justice, right? And so the thing that's, like, really bothered me is, like, okay, like, a lot of these women don't have careers. Like, a lot of them are, like, still receiving death threats, over what they were willing to come forward and say, right?
And it's messed up.
Well, yeah, but, like, where is Louis' brutal honesty for his own fucking fan base? Like, where is his brutal honesty in assessing his own actions? It's like suspiciously absent, wouldn't you say? Like, this guy who seemed to be willing to talk about anything about himself, like, at best he gives us a fucking knock-knock joke, about what he did. When there's only one comedian I could ever think of who could actually address something like that, like, who could actually kind of show, like, because that's why I brought up the Harvey Weinstein thing earlier, because, like, we had this full-blown monster to compare him to, or at least a monster who makes his actions seem less monstrous, right? And so, like, the second Louis scandal broke, we're not talking about people who have been through what he's put them through, right? The first thing anyone seems to give a fuck about is, well, what does the road to redemption look like for this guy? Like the first thing right? It's like we don't ask that question about any criminal, it seems. And, but the first thing we're asking is, what does the road to redemption look like? And I mean, honestly, when it all broke, I did believe, I was like, I don't know, but maybe he could actually show us, because he could point, like, he could take that, like, insane analytical mind, that has the ability to, like, assess morality and make it funny some fucking how. Like, that also that willingness to, like, really just, like, bury yourself, really, like, talk about, like, what and who you are, If anyone could do it, this would be the fucking guy. But he's not chosen to do that. He chooses to brush it to the side. He's choosing to try to ride it out. He never actually apologized. Like, how fucked up is that? He issued that original statement,
right.
And I remember even thinking at the time, like, this is carefully avoiding an apology, which is strange, right? Like, shouldn't that be the bare minimum? Like, just to fucking apologize? But, like, what I, as a fan of Louis, or a former fan, what I would have expected would be for him to, like address it and like really kind of make amends, because, like, dude, you're one of the fucking only people who could actually do that. I mean, like, especially knowing that, like, it's his fucking fan base that's making these women continue to feel unsafe. He could literally directly address that and make that funny. He could do that.
So what's the part that he needs to address, in your opinion? Because, like, I'm pulling up the apology right now, and, like, he didn't say the word "I'm sorry," and I don't think he actually I think he did not actually call the victims. He just issued this. No, and he spent a lot of time. He spent a lot of time, like, before it came. Like, dude, he only really owned it when he knew that article was dropping. Exactly. I mean, yeah.
He was just trying to get ahead of it. That's all he ever did. He just tried to get ahead of it, And then, like, he even, like, inadvertently revealed to the one woman, because he's like, sorry about that incident that happened in the bathroom, and she was like, what incident?
Oh, right. You didn't even remember.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, that's the other thing nobody fucking thinks about. Like, beyond the fact that, like, every male comic I talk to remembers the, like the weakest one that starts at the top of the fucking article. They remember half of what happened, and even that one. No one ever seems to do the mental math that these are women whose, like, accusations go across a number of years. These are the ones who are just willing to talk about it. It's like, do you really think he jacked off 5 fucking times and he was done jacking off? Like, he probably... we'll never really know, how many that he did this to.
Right.
Like, and so, I don't know, I guess okay, so there's his act, right? There's his act where the guy was, like, very critical, and for all we know, if, like, we weren't living in a world post his accusations, for all we know, like, that critic might have found all of that very funny, might have thought it was all genius and brave or whatever. I don't know. I honestly can't make that, like, claim or that judgment. I will say that, like, when, there's the bit about, like, he's talking about, the word retard. And I remember I heard that in the bootleg set, I think. And I was like, this is kind of very similar to when he's talking, he was talking about, like, gay slurs, and how it was, like, common to use those in his childhood. Yeah,
and in one of his, in Shoot Up
Phoenix
or something.
People are people from Phoenix are Phoenicians. Yeah.
I thought that was a hack premise to begin with, and also a weird one to use as ammo against him, because a lot of other comics have said that exact same thing. But
well, I mean, but it's just like it does just feel like a recycled premise as well. Like, it's just like, he's
still
just
doing it.
Dude, you've been down this road. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
I think he does recycle premise. But anyway, so the crux. So basically, do you think he has changed about the whole using, like, exploiting his power? Do you think he's reformed? Is the word I'm looking for?
I doubt it. I mean, like, because, like, if I just feel like if he had done any, like, real introspection, like, if there was any amount of, like, real shame and real remorse, I don't see how he could have avoided bringing that to the stage with him. That's why I'm disappointed in this shit, because it's
You
just
mean about the? So you thought he would have to? You think as a stand-up?
I'm sure he's not doing it anymore, but I'm sure that's also just because he knows he'd get caught. Like, he knows that would really be the end for him.
But yeah, he's still definitely the same person, but I just think he knows how there was. I'm not going to give him I'm not going to say he was not aware of the power dynamic when it happened, but there's certainly we both agree. We both agree that there was one and that it was wrong to exploit it. But I'm just wondering if he actually is self-aware now and like knows, well, this is creepy to do that, and it is sexual harassment just like any others. And
does his material seem to reflect that? Has he issued any apology that seems to reflect that? Like, I would say no. I don't think he's like genuinely remorseful. I don't think that he's like changed anything about himself. I think the only difference between Louis now and Louis then is that he knows now he can't get away with it.
Right.
I think that's it.
Yeah, it's hard to know what's going on in someone's head. I mean, there's no way to just scan his brain for emotions, but it's really hard. I think when any dude gets caught it's so shaming and shameful that you don't even want to. The more you admit to it, the more it looks bad that you're but it's so common for men to do that I don't know. It's just, you gotta learn from it.
To a degree, I'd almost say that anybody doing anything wrong, that's almost a universal experience. Like every person, even if it's not on the same level, every person has done stuff that they know is wrong, and is just doing it, and until that moment when someone catches them, and you feel that like sense of shame that might not have been present until suddenly it was public. We're social creatures, like humans have like an individual sensibility, but then they also have one that crosses over with like how they're perceived by other people.
I guess the thing I would argue, if I were to make a nice argument here, is that since he is kind of on the fringe of what's considered a monster versus redeemable, he is kind of on the fence, and that's what society seems to agree on, or it's controversial. If he could,
I compared him to Weinstein, like
right,
I'm calling like Weinstein the real monster, but
we were comparing him, but he's not he's not the same thing. He actually did it in a way that, first of all, wasn't illegal, wasn't really even non-consensual, because the things he did, except for maybe the one over the phone or something. But okay, so people agree that it's on the terms of scale of sexual harassment and assault, it's pretty low, if it even qualifies as such. So
that's where I would disagree. Like I'd say that there's worse forms of sexual harassment out there, and I think that's the problem too. Is that like a lot of us are writing this off as being, quote, not that bad. But I mean, like, I don't know. Think about if that happened to somebody that you knew. If someone that you knew and cared about.
It was
felt cornered.
Okay, sorry. It's just that I'm trying to get like a point out that we.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
But basically, I'm saying that sexual harassment is what he pretty much is being accused of, and that's what he admitted to. If that's what he did, it was in a time before all this awareness came about. It was at a time before a spotlight was shown upon it, and not only were people getting away with it, it was not as stigmatized to even be that way. That's why I think there might be a path towards redemption if he doesn't. I think if he can somehow just not break the. I don't know. It's really touchy because we don't know what's going on in his head. I just think that he's worthy of redemption just because. A lot of like he was saying even in the bit, like if you were me, you would have done something wrong. Like if everyone is fucked up, you're not exposed, like you're not famous enough for it to matter.
I think there's actually a huge difference between sexual acts we wouldn't want everybody to know about and sexual acts that involve another person feeling unsafe, another person being part of it who's not consenting to it. I think there's actually a huge difference in that. And actually, I think that's a huge problem there, is like the fact that he's like, he actually, what he used to do was make us analyze our morality. Now what he's doing is using his analysis to like obfuscate it so that he doesn't seem as bad.
I mean, that's what he's doing with jokes.
Because it's a false equivalency.
Is you're saying he has an agenda to try to? It seems like
himself a certain light. Yeah. Here's the thing. Because what I was talking about, like, I think that would be his path to redemption is to objectively analyze himself, to talk about what was wrong with what he did. To me, that's if there ever was a path to redemption.
On stage?
It sounds like, yeah, why not?
Because I don't think it'd be funny, that's why. I think he would turn
wouldn't be
away.
Funny if you or me tried to do it. Right. It might be funny if one of the best comedians in the world took a crack at it.
So I think that's kind of anti-logical. I think it's anti-comedy to say that you could show your true like humility and emotion towards a real event. Like you can, like that's. I think Aziz kind of did that a little bit. So maybe you can.
Well, I mean, like you're basically like putting barriers on like what kind of work you think is even possible to be funny. I mean, like we're always talking about all these like controversial topics, like and like it seems like the battle cry is constantly, like just because you're offended by it doesn't mean it's not funny. Well, just because you find it emotionally uncomfortable doesn't mean it can't have potential to be funny.
Well, I agree with that.
That cuts both ways.
I think, honestly, the reason he hasn't done it on stage is because he is still kind of pissed off. That's why he does all these victimization.
Exactly. Like he's not remorseful. He's not sorry.
Like his victims have gotten some negative like death threats, but I'm sure he gets like 100 times more death threats. So
but
he's not
gets
ready
those while
to
still having a career.
He's bitter at something, I don't know. He's not ready to be humble, even though I think he is humble.
I want to ask you something about something you just said a minute ago, though. Before I lose it, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but so is your idea of like what is a redemptive act for him is like simply to not repeat it?
No, I think he needs to do some interview on some like big fucking show like Joe Rogan, something. Okay. Besides stand.
I can respect that. If you want to say that, like, if he can't figure out a way to make it funny, that's not on him. I can agree with that.
Right.
I think he's capable of it. I think he just won't. But if, like, what you're saying is, like, yeah, he should do some form of mea culpa, I can agree with that, too. Like, that's fine. But he's not doing that shit either.
And even that, the thing, like at this point, he's just happy to get some shows, I guess. I don't know if that'd be a good idea to even do that now. I think society itself is still very needs to untangle itself in general before, then maybe society just needs to cool off a little bit on the whole anti-male thing. I think that's why I have no chance. It's all a bunch of SJWs. That's how I look at it.
Well,
but eventually, yes, he should go on some serious talk show.
I don't even think society is like anti-male. I think society right now is just anti the idea of what a man was supposed to be. That's like been pervasive and dominant.
That's a whole can of worms. Like the whole anti-toxic masculinity, whole gender norms are being broken down and challenged and examined.
Yeah, and I mean, why shouldn't they be? I mean, like they're old concepts, right? Doesn't any idea that society's been carrying and just taken for granted, doesn't that deserve questioning? I mean, like, isn't that part of what we do?
Oh, I think we should keep questioning every aspect of every little thing, down to the micro level that is possible, down to the atoms, and ideas the same thing. We should break down ideas down to the lowest or highest resolution, however you want to put it. But that said, there's still some reason that we are masculine. There's a reason that men drift or are magnet or naturally that way, and there's a reason women are naturally feminine, I think.
Yeah, but I think it's also hard to analyze like what is an essential form of masculinity when so many of our ideas of like what is essentially masculine come from a different time. Like come from times that aren't even necessarily rooted in like what we would call nature, if you look at the timeline of human existence, like organized society is like, it's a speck on that timeline. Like, so
Right.
like we try to make all these analyses of what a man is, what masculinity is, based on all these precepts that like they only exist for like a footnote's worth of our history, you know. And
Of
we don't
human history or of evolutionary?
of human history.
Okay, just of human.
Of human history, like in terms of like the full spanning of like human evolutionary history, like what those societies looked like before we had a written word, like when they were too small, you know, when like language was something that was probably only used for like communicating then and there, you know, like written language doesn't exist, that sort of thing. You know, like if we can only analyze that based on like, you know, where they left their remains and what they did with them, how they died, that sort of stuff. You know, like drawings that they might have left behind. Like we have so little understanding of like what men and women like really are, what those full blown differences are between us. You know, most of like that understanding comes from, you know, like agrarian society. You know,
are we talking going back towards like hunter gatherers, where men were probably the ones who hunted and women were probably the ones who looked after the kids?
Well, that's the thing. Like, there's evidence of societies that like basically lived fully gender segregated until it was time to reproduce. You know, so like they would have been both doing their own hunting and their own gathering.
Oh, really?
Like there's so little that we actually know about that. So much of that is fucking speculation.
I see.
And people will read like one thing, you know, like that's a big problem. Like with any time that there's an article quoting a recent study, you know, it's like, well, great, but that's one study in a pantheon of studies. You know, like that. It's just that some journalist found something that will, you know, generate readership or generate clicks, you know, or maybe the editor or maybe the publisher approves of it. Like now you have stuff that is actually basically coming down to, you know, whether someone finds it publishable or finds it sellable. And now we're going to pass that off as the latest scientific theory, even though that might not necessarily be the case.
So what specifically in modern times, like today, is like a masculine trait that you think is toxic or something that's only based on human invention and should be done with, if anything?
I mean, if you're asking me in my own personal view, like, it does feel like a lot of men right now, and like, you know, remember too, like when I say this, like I'm a tradesman. Like that's actually the whole reason that I felt comfortable to say fuck Zanies, because like of all the comedians I know who are like incensed about the fact that Louis, you know, like did his bit at Zanies, like they'll talk shit on Louis, none of them talk shit on Zanies. And I think that's because, you know, like ultimately, like they're one of very few games in town for us to go to, you know, to like get a real audience, all that sort of shit.
Yeah, that's a bold thing to say that, which I kind of respect when someone burns a bridge intentionally and decidedly.
Yeah, because fuck them.
That's why
I wanted to come on the air today and say fuck Zanies, and I'll say fuck Zanies like maybe 3 more times before this is done. but that's because like fuck them, because I got a good union job. I'm lucky in that regard.
You mean the whole franchise or just the Rosemont location?
I mean, I honestly don't even know like what their hierarchy is.
Just
like,
to be clear,
you know,
because
I'm sure that the decision to book him probably literally came down to like maybe 1 to 2 people. Like I have no idea.
You're correct. It did pretty much come down to the general manager, I believe. Who might even be listening. He might even listen to this.
If you're listening, fuck you, Nick Kuntzman. You know, that's me. Don't book me. Fuck you. Yeah, because that's the thing. Because like I have a good job. I'm lucky in that regard. Like, you know, that's rare for millennials, especially. But also because like I got into comedy initially because I write and because I wanted to network with other writers. Turns out there's actually like writing something comedians get asked to do rather than something comedians like do. And you know, there are comics who write, you know, but most comics want to do comedy. I respect that. I stay with comedy because like it's something that I learned that I loved, you know.
Yeah.
But if I never make it as a professional comedian, I'm comfortable with that. Like that's fine. That's okay for me. You know, and I'm in a position where I can say fuck Zanies, so I will say fuck Zanies.
And just to clarify, Louis C.K.
Anyway,
Sorry. So
Oh no, but getting back to your original point of what's a toxic masculine trait that I see presenting now. Yeah, that the world is a game. That the world is a game and a game to be won. You know, like that human and social interactions are like these winnable things. Like this division of every social thing that we do into some form of contest, into some form of one of us is better and one of us will win. Like, that's really not our species. Okay. Like, to be honest, we are a collaborative species. Like, that's just true. Everything we have now, I'm talking to you on a phone that somebody else built. You know, someone else designed. Every single piece of this phone was discovered by somebody else, you know, was put together by somebody else, you know. Like, the evidence of us as a social organism is everywhere. Okay. You know, but right now it's to the benefit of very few people to make sure that, like, we all imagine that we're in competition with one another. You know? But I think that's a trait that's, like, kind of encouraged in men, and men are encouraged to develop.
To be competitive?
Yeah, to be competitive. I'm not saying that there is no such thing as a natural inclination to being competitive. I'm just saying that I think that that's a trait that is being selectively encouraged right now, and encouraged in a very detrimental fashion, because it kind of makes us feel like a little bit isolated from one another. I mean, like, how close can I really feel to people if I perceive every single person I interact with as potential competition?
I mean, that'd be weird. I don't know if I do that.
Hard to know.
Yeah, every other person. Yeah, I don't know. Certainly. So you're saying, what does it boil down to that's evil, that needs to stop about this competition theory that's pushed only on men? And is it only pushed on men? Because I would not.
No. I think it's something that, like, right now society has in a very broad and general way. Yeah. But I do also think that, like, competitiveness is associated with masculinity, and vice versa. Like, if you don't have a competitive drive in you, you're considered less masculine.
Okay.
You know, and that's actually an observation that's been with me since childhood. And like I remember it being like a kid and being in, like, you know, kid sports. And I remember every single time that I watched someone's dad have a complete fucking meltdown over the ref not calling something right or their kid fucking something up. I remember every single time I would watch someone's dad do that, I was like, pretty glad I don't know my dad. Honestly.
I see, yeah. So I guess the thing I would wonder is if it's inherently bad to be competitive in life, because
that's not what I said. That like, what I'm saying is that to, like, to basically perceive competition in everything is what I'm saying is, like, is like a negative trait. Like, to be looking for the competition, to perceive everything as competition, you know, like, to not really, to, like, kind of close yourself off to the idea that, like, maybe some things should be about working together. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was getting to. Like, basically just getting at the debate between competition versus collaboration with the greater human, not society in particular. I think conservatives and libertarians kind of like to be their own person, whereas liberals or leftists or whatever, socialists, like to feed off each other and kind of build each other up, and are willing to sacrifice their own freedom to do that, whereas the conservatives, libertarians are like, no, fuck you. It's a fucking dangerous world. I'm gonna have my own security, my own guns, my own safety nets.
And those are largely men, you've noticed, right? Come on, you've got to have noticed that.
Well, I mean,
I'm not saying that there are no women who subscribe to that ideology. I'm just saying that it's a largely male-driven ideology, right? And it's like this idea that, like, you know, bare minimum, I can take my rifle and head off into the woods, right?
That part, I don't know.
I could scrap it out for myself. And you'd be amazed at how often I hear that notion, like, espoused by guys that I work with.
You're probably right,
you know, like
that it is mostly males who are propagating these ideals, and maybe women are just kind of going along with it because that's kind of they're just being passive to men.
Well, but, and they always like to for some reason reference Darwin very selectively. I'm going to add, because like it's always like survival of the fittest. Well, yeah, survival of the fittest, but you're not really thinking about what that really means, because we have a societal conception of what, the quote-unquote fittest is, but what Darwin's talking about is fittest for the situation. So like underwater, a fish is the fittest for that. A minnow beats you in terms of surviving underwater. You are stronger in every conceivable fashion than a minnow, except for your capacity to breathe underwater. So when we say survival of the fittest, if by fittest we mean best able to live underwater, a minnow beats me every single time, right? And then another thing is, in Darwin's theories, there's a lot about how species that work collaboratively in order to assure the survival of the species are much more likely to survive than species that don't. That's so. Did
you mention social Darwinism, or are we just talking about Darwinism?
Well, they apply. When people talk about social Darwinism, they're usually talking about the strongest guy, or the best and most capable individual who can achieve things as an individual. But actually, and that's this I don't know if social Darwinism is an actual school of thought, but if they are really basing the notions off of Darwin's theories, well, then Darwin's theories actually side with species that work collaboratively to assure the survival of the species. And honestly, that's what humans have done. That's how we made it here. That's a part that always stuck with me was I was watching the Nova, the PBS Nova series on evolution, and they were talking about how they found the skull of for its time a very old hominid, and they were able to learn about from that skull that this creature had lived the last 2 to 3 years of its life without teeth, which means that, in the animal world, if you've lost your teeth, you've lost the first stage of digestion, because it's not like that animal can just go and mash things up with a rock. You need to actually masticate. You need your saliva to start breaking it down. So their best guess on how this creature survived is that people were chewing its food for it.
All right. To interrupt a little bit, just because we're getting off into a very distant topic about social Darwinism and evolution, but I like it. Just that maybe just to wrap it up pretty soon, because I'm going to try to have one more caller.
Please do.
But just to put a button on this conversation, what do you think of incels, really quick?
Well, we were kind of talking about that last time. My feelings on incels are that most of their a lot of their most toxic behavior stems from the fact that they don't fit into a lot of conceptions of masculinity. They've created this this caricature of the Chad. You mentioned that. And you also mentioned the men going their own way thing, which I'm familiar with through Reddit, and I've paged through that subreddit. And the thing that I cannot really square away with, they're going their own way, but if you go through that subreddit, literally 90% of what they talk about is women. That's a conservative estimate. It's pretty much only that they talk about women and what's bad about women, So how the fuck are you going your own way, man? Shouldn't you be posting pictures of your DIY projects, your business that you're starting, your fucking post your fucking meditations, while you've been going your own way? Why is you going your own way obsessing on women?
That's probably what the community is built. That's what they say they're doing, but that's what some of the posts are probably about, but they get buried because obviously the top, hottest, juiciest shit is going to be anti-women. Because that's what gets the most eyeballs.
And it's just because it's a lot of guys just licking their wounds, and those wounds largely exist because they don't fit into these cookie cutter notions of masculinity. They are upset with themselves for that, and they turn that anger outwards. Whoa, it's not my fault. It's these women with their stupid preferences, and it's them rejecting me, and that's it's their problem.
Do you think there's any equivalent of that on the other side for women talking shit about men? Is there any communities like that?
I'm certain there's a similar. Sexual rejection is a tough thing to deal with. You know, like I
For both,
imagine it
yeah,
would be
for
tough
everybody.
for anybody. And I imagine it could inspire toxic behavior in a lot of people. I
Right.
think the reason why it comes up more often with these young men is because, like it or not, our society, this is like a commonly misunderstood thing when people bring up the idea of like male privilege. It's not like that, you know, you're a man, ipso facto, you get the best of everything. It's just essentially saying, like, you're a man, society is structured in such a way that you're more likely to receive some benefits. And, like, that's going to add up to, generally speaking, more men in positions of power. It's going to add up to, generally speaking, more men making the decisions about how society is structured. So
So
I
you
mean,
believe
it's kind
in?
of like
Would you say that sounds to me like evidence for patriarchy? Would you say the patriarchy is still a relevant thing in this country?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
checking.
yeah. Yeah, dude.
We had our
I mean,
last time we talked a little bit about that, and I don't know. I think I could talk to you forever, and I'd like to have you back on immediately.
thank you very much, man.
Because you have a lot of topics that we could get into. But,
Yes, I'll try not to get too ranty, but obviously
great.
I broke my promise on that today.
No, I wanted you.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, thanks. All right, that was, I believe, our second caller, and we got pretty in the woods on the topics at hand. Hey, thanks for calling in. This is Donovan.
Hey.
Hey.
Sorry, yeah, I'm not live. I'm like 20 seconds off on my stream.
No worries,
Pretty,
dude. Thanks.
Pretty interesting.
Thanks
All right,
for
cool.
waiting around so long, dude.
Yeah, no, I've been sitting. I got home. I started this phone call, finishing up that Voodoo open mic at North Bar.
Oh, you actually went to that? Who hosts that? You don't actually. Don't say.
No, I'll say. I think people should check it out. It's the thing I'll be here to plug. Go to the Voodoo open mic if you're into open mic comedy. Unless this is gonna be a thing that cancels whatever open mic we plug. I don't know, but no. The Voodoo open mic is a fun open mic at North Bar on Saturday at 4. Rory McPeak is hosting
Rory, the Roarster.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Who is currently handing out flyers at Louis C.K.'s outside Louis C.K.'s.
Seriously?
Yeah. No, and I don't want to go too into the weeds into these topics.
Do you want to get into them at all?
I do want to touch. There's one topic.
Yeah.
I did enjoy Nick's opinion on, or what you guys started to touch on, which was competition versus collaboration. I do like that idea, but I got some things. One thing I do want to say about Louis is that he sold out these club shows in 15 minutes. He's playing a lot of club shows.
Wow.
He could have booked the Chicago Theater.
You think?
He could have filled the Chicago Theater. This is we're seeing a year ago. We were seeing him do the surprise pop-ins at his home clubs and then Europe clubs.
Right.
And now we're seeing him tour clubs. We're gonna see him in theaters in a year with polished.
It sounds like the trajectory is definitely leading to that. You know?
I think so.
I think that's why Nick was so. One of the reasons Nick was so annoyed is because the controversy is not outweighing his success. He's getting the bookings.
Totally understand.
Yeah, that's just me guessing, though. I don't know if he
No.
actually thinks that. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sure he does, and I understand being maybe if that's what you're upset with. I think that's the thing is Louis C.K. is somewhere on the spectrum we're talking about, where either his act either does or doesn't outweigh what you think of him, you know. And I think all of us have that inside us, and it applies to every case, and we probably fall somewhere on it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And
with every example.
Even Nick seems like he is not anti what he's talking about on stage. He's anti that he's not apologizing on stage or being humble or actually truly, whether it's on stage or off stage, he has not fully addressed his wrongdoing. Other than that, I think I got him to kind of admit that he is not totally pro canceling him, but I didn't really ask, so I can't put words in his mouth. I'll try not to do that.
Totally.
I'm trying hard.
And that's the thing, and that's where it's hard to like differentiate, because it is hard to I get to be in a position where like, oh, this isn't an artist I can really handle anymore, if that's your opinion. And then also separating like, but then should he be canceled? Like, those are different questions. There's one question of, is he is he morally good or not? And that with Louis, he probably isn't. He clearly isn't. He clearly isn't morally good, which is where his comedy comes from.
Right, yeah. What comedian, what good comedian is a moral fucking, is the arbiter of morality? I can't think of any.
It's not a prerequisite to be that,
You're right.
You don't have to be that. And, that doesn't define talent in any way, and I think every comedian knows that.
It just, even if you are moral, it doesn't make you funny to be that.
Oh, 100% agree. 100% agree. I'm not moral, but I'm not Louis. I mean, that's what every comedian stands, though, is that, it's a hard position to be in.
So you don't try to be moral on stage? Because I'm talking to Donovan. He's a fellow comedian.
No, not at all.
From Chicago, by the way.
Yeah, no. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary. I also think it's important to know that even if you're doing yourself, everyone, to some extent, and a lot of extent more than others, are doing a character. And so there's no obligation to be moral. You could be the evil side of yourself, and that's totally fair. And a lot of times I think that's what comics do. A lot of times that's what I do. It's an exaggerated caricature of my worst self.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I started figuring out how to do comedy until I started yelling and being mean on stage.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just me personally.
You gotta own it, right?
Like,
and that's the way when you're owning it. And
That's
why, your comedy is good,
Some
and
people.
that's why I want to talk about. Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
No, you go on first. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, some people are they're only successful by being mean. Being nice just doesn't work for some people. And also, I don't want to be nice that much on stage. It's more fun to lash out and be honest and crude and harsh.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's totally makes sense that you're working this. It's like this is what I'm doing. This is my comedy. This is this guy. And there is this line you have to blur kind of between what's on stage, where it's like, that's who you have to lean in. My Chicago accent is much thicker on stage than it is in real life. It's even thicker, more on this phone call than it is.
Yeah, it's coming through right now for sure.
Yeah, I have the nasally voice, so that part's real. It's but I feel like there's a twang that I definitely put on stage.
You should.
Exactly, and that's what it is. It's a more, I don't know, blue collar character.
I love it.
It's not even that, but Louis, I mean, he's not obligated to address it, but I understand I can completely understand if that's what you can't, then you don't want it,
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is something I could have multiple episodes on, and I just like how it's all dudes commenting, but hey, that's what I pulled. I can only pull male people to talk about it, but this is such a meaty, relevant topic, and also just because he happens to be doing it as we speak. And but I do like how you said that you do your you actually have a cadence. I hate people who don't have a cadence in comedy.
Yeah, and I think that's what you got to work, and that's what Louis. These are club gigs. These aren't theater gigs. And I think what's interesting is, 10 years ago, I don't know. I wonder if this same controversy happened 10 years ago, people would even still know about the club, pay attention to the club gigs as much. They might not have paid attention to him until he came and played the Chicago Theater. But I hope, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe people would have known. I don't know. And maybe it's fair that now they know they should they should have this controversy. But he still sold out in 15 minutes.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, he's still probably the number one most famous comedians in the world. So that's why even working clubs is going to generate news, just because Chicago is the third biggest city. So it's kind of a big deal that we welcomed him finally. Took him a little bit to get a club to say yes to him. I believe.
Is this one of the first inside America? I know he's doing Europe stuff.
I mean, I think he's worked like maybe some other Midwest places, but who cares? Because they're not Chicago. Chicago.
Yeah,
is
no,
like,
this is still definitely big local news. You know,
there's a lot of SJWs in Chicago, and I'm not saying our last caller was an SJW. I just like to lump him in to that group because he's clearly against something about him.
And what I hope is that comedy doesn't become this like 60-40 split. And I don't know who, in favor of who, where people just double down on this and where they can't see everything as a case-by-case basis, that they analyze themselves and be like, okay, this is someone this is an artist I can continue to enjoy and respect their art, or this is an artist that I can't personally get behind. And maybe to an
what do you mean by 60-40?
That's where I worry that a lot of this stuff is kind of marketed as like this 60-40 split of, hey, I'm a fan of the comedy that pushes the limit, where it's like marketed as that.
Yeah.
Or I'm a fan of the comedy that is like, we know the splits. It's the Nanette Chappelle. It's the Nanette Chappelle marketing. Whatever, that's the top. It's marketed down, and I hope comedy doesn't become that. I'd like to continue to see bills, or shows where that it's both comics.
Gotcha. Yeah.
The best of both.
It's so divisive.
I don't want it to become and I don't want it to continue where people double down. And a lot of times, sometimes people's opinions do sound like they're doubling down on a side.
I think it already is 60-40, if not even more skewed than that. I think it's very skewed towards SJW comedy being the favorable market right now.
And no matter what that ratio is, the ratio is still enough of both that both will continue to exist. Louis C.K. will continue to sell out Zanies Rosemont. Louis C.K. could probably still sell out the Chicago Theater, but he'll definitely always be able to sell out Zanies Rosemont. And that's the case. And like Shane Gillis, we were talking today, Shane Gillis will probably always be able to sell out a club now. He probably has a better chance of continuing to work clubs for the rest of his life now than he did before.
You're right. If he didn't get fired, I would have probably never heard of him.
Yeah, and that doesn't deserve to be rewarded like that necessarily.
But it does. Yeah, so it's a double-edged.
These comedies need to be rewarded.
The SJWs have to be careful who they pounce on because that's good press. It leads to good press for them. So
exactly. Everyone has to be, and everyone has to, and no one, you can't, don't, and just it's unwise to double down. And I think, I think you would I could see you performing with the leftist, most extreme SJW on a bill if you like their comedy. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of comedians could. Exactly.
I think I've done that at least once.
Yeah, I've at least been on one showcase. It was one. Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, even if every comedian gets canceled from stand-up, we'll still have all the fucking memes online. You can't shut off the meme pipe. There will be funny fucking memes from whichever side they're from. I happen to think that Trump supporters are really better at memeing than leftists. That's just my opinion. You don't have to agree with it. Take it for what it is. That's me. That's what I think. I laugh more at right wings than left wings. Lefties.
And I think right-wingers have made me laugh, but I'm definitely a lefty.
That's fine. That's great. That's great for you to admit.
You know what I mean?
Sorry for talking over you. Go ahead.
No, totally understandable. But it's like, I just want us to be a world where, like, I want to be, and first off, if I was some political comic, if that was even my view on stage, I'd want to be on a bill with the right. I would be on, it's like, it's about listening them out and be, that I could still support. And there's views I can't really get behind, and I don't think, we don't need to expound on them, but we probably see eye to eye on all of this.
That's probably true, because you sound like more of a moderate than a leftist, to be honest.
I'm,
Yeah, who cares about
I'm
labels,
just looking
dude?
to do my thing. Yeah. I'm
Well,
just looking to book the 10:30 NBC slot.
Yeah, any slot on NBC at 10 p.m.
No, yeah, but I'd sell out is my point.
Cool. Yeah, exactly. Me too. If I could, if I had the option.
Yeah.
Being a comic is a loser. You're a loser most of your life.
Oh, that's what I want. Yeah, and I think that the people outside of comedy don't contextualize is like, no, it's 98% losers, you know, and that's
who
how it
stay
has to
losers
be.
until death.
And it has to be that it's like crabs out of a barrel,
Mhm.
you know. It has to be that way.
It's rough.
No, it doesn't have to be that way. That's actually what I wanted to touch on. That's the topic I found the most interesting of the prior conversation, not to hate, was the competition versus collaboration. I do think a lot of times comedy as a whole, it forces it to feel as competition when I don't think it ever really is. I think most people want it to be collaboration. Like I think everyone secretly wants it to be way more collaborative. Everyone is putting up an icy front that they don't really get behind. You know
That's
what I mean?
a very interesting topic that I would love to go more into, but I'm going to try to get this to be under the 2-hour mark. So is it okay if we wrap it up here?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool, man.
Have a good night, everyone.
It was good having you on. All right, I think we got pretty deep into it tonight on many fun topics such as Louis C.K. and incels and gender shit.
The Sergeant at Arms will restore order in